So what's going on with you these days?
I'm coaching, so that's about it. I have my 10-year-old daughter, so I know she's 10. So it's kind of tough because she's at home. Like where we live, the schools were so old that the HVAC was like ridiculously old, and they had to replace it, I think, in almost every building. So we have not gone back at all.
Yeah, that's
And
tough.
it's supposed to be March 1st, but she's not going to go back, just because she's had too many medical problems,
Oh, I see. Yes.
a lot of medical problems. So we
Oh.
just, with her, like a cold could end up in
Mhm.
weeks in the hospital. So we're just not taking the chance. And believe it or not, her class, which is a self-contained class, only one kid is going back.
Wow.
One.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So she's at home and you're coaching at the club. So tell me where you're doing with the gymnastics when you're coaching.
Starbound Gymnastics.
What's that?
Starbound Gymnastics Academy. It's in
Yep.
Bridgeton.
Where is Bridgeton?
Um, South, east. So
Okay.
you know what violin is?
Violin? No.
Mm-mm.
I know. I didn't born near. Name, but what's
Well,
the big city?
that's one of the bigger cities in New Jersey that people tend to know Vineland. They hear Vineland because it's like actually the biggest city in New Jersey, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
I know. I was the same thing, but square footage, I guess they're talking about, or
Hmm.
mileage. It's the biggest city in New Jersey. But if you're let me say, if you're going from Philadelphia to New Jersey,
Yeah.
if you would go straight, you would hit Atlantic City. If you go a little bit further south, but keep going like you're going towards Atlantic City, you'd get there.
I
But
see.
it's in the middle of farms. You got
Wow.
nothing but farms. And that Bridgeton is a very small city that is very interesting.
So tell me, so where did you grow up?
I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York.
In Mount Vernon. I always think of you as a Jersey girl, but you're not a Jersey girl. You're a New York girl.
I'm a New Yorker. I grew up in New York.
Isn't that something? So
Yeah.
tell me about how you were introduced to gymnastics, your early story.
Okay, I started gymnastics. Actually, I started dancing school, and we would learn tumbling and that kind of acrobatics. And I was just really pretty, adept at it. And I was big ham. So I would get solos on our end of the year performances with gymnastics and stuff. And my dance teacher told my mom, get her involved. I mean, she really seems to like it. So I actually had a late start to some extent. I did Turners, which I don't know if you ever heard of those,
Yep.
the German organization, which wasn't really, I mean, it's gymnastics, but it was interesting because the vault was a short vault, like it was a
Yep.
half a vault. The beams were wood. That's all they had because you had to pull them in and out. The bars were literally P bars that they raised one side.
Wow.
Yeah. And it wasn't really, I mean, it was gymnastics, but it wasn't per se.
Old
And
school. It's really old school.
yeah, I mean, they had levels. They only compete against other turners, and they had different levels. But they
Yes.
had women in their 40s, 50s competing, and they were doing scales and on the bars and jumping and doing, you know, kick over, like jumping up the handstand and
Right.
dismounting off with a high bar, like you saw back in the 50s or whatever those time frames were. That's what they were doing, and I thought, wow, this is gymnastics, but I had no clue. And then from there, I went to a YWCA,
Mhm.
which again was a step up because we did what was back then the USGF, but
Right.
we did the same compulsory routines, but we only competed against other Ys, so it was
Right.
limited.
Okay.
And the equipment we had to pull in and out every day because the gym was also used for basketball and volleyball and
Yep.
karate and everything else because it was a Y. So we couldn't keep our equipment out. So the bars weren't anchored to the floor. And the floor was not spring because we had to literally fold it out and fold it back in and bring it back into the equipment room.
Community gymnastics.
Yes. I guess you would understand that, huh?
I do. Yes.
Then from there, I was there for a little while and a couple of years, and then the coach there basically told my parents that they taken me as far as they could, and that I needed to go somewhere else if I wanted to continue to do gymnastics. So at that point in time, I went to arena gymnastics in Stamford, Connecticut, which
Okay.
is interesting because I'm from New York and I had to go up to Connecticut every day for gym. But by that time, I was actually in 8th grade.
Okay. All right.
So
Wow.
it
How
was
far
pretty
was that
steep.
commute?
It was about a 45-minute commute, but I had to take the train every day because my mom was working. And I know where we had practice at 2:30 in the afternoon. So I literally would get picked up from school from a cab. It would take me to the train station. I would take the train from New Rochelle, New York, or Mount, depending on the day, the train station, all up to Stamford, Connecticut. And then I would catch a bus that took me right outside the gym.
Wow.
So every day I did that commute by myself. It was interesting, and people were like, "Oh, today you couldn't do that," which maybe not. But I used to sit up front where the conductor was every day, and so eventually they got to know me. All the conductors knew who I was because 5 days a week I was on this train all the way up to Stamford, Connecticut. So it
Amazing.
was it was interesting. Hour and a half commute by train, and but like that type of commute from public transportation took me about an hour and a half. Then
Mm,
my mom would pick me up in the evening when we were done.
how long did you do that for?
I did that for 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And when I first started at Arena, I was supposed to be what was back then class 3
Hmm.
compulsories because I'd never really competed against anyone outside of a Y.
Yeah.
And so I competed class 3 at the Y, but because I didn't really have much experience, and so they were going to put me class 3 compulsory optionals since I'd never done optionals. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I don't know what that means, but okay. And but they had me work out with the class 2s because of the time, because at the beginning they didn't want me traveling to train at night. And the class 2s worked out in the morning, so they felt that was safer. So I worked out with the class 2s all summer, and by the end of the summer, I had all the skills necessary to do class 2. So they said, okay, we'll put you class 2. And from there, it was class 2 for a year, class 1 for a year, and then I went elite.
Wow. So exciting. So tell us about, so in your gym, in Black Gymnasts in History, were there a lot of other Black gymnasts? How was the environment there?
It was, I didn't feel uncomfortable ever. I will say that much, which is pretty interesting because there were no other Black gymnasts at the time when I first went there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I never felt like I didn't belong there per se. What I think was a thing that I felt, and maybe I mistook it for something else, was the fact that here was this kid who came in. I was supposed to be a class 3, and here I am working out with them. I'm competing against them, and now I'm winning states and I'm winning regionals. And they're like, where did this kid come from? So I think some of the animosity I felt was because people were like, who is she?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much because I was Black. But I can't say that honestly that wasn't the case. It's
Right.
just that my inexperienced young age, I thought it was just because I was kind of doing better than them athletically.
Mm-hmm.
So looking back on it now, I think to some extent it might have been, but I'm still friends with so many of my teammates from back then that I realized that it really wasn't. I mean, it was a family,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of gyms are. So
Right.
it was special, and we had a lot of change. When we started going elite, people elite, we had Mira Grossfeld's had just closed her gym.
Ah, okay.
And so a lot of the kids came from Grossfeld's. Some
Mhm.
of the coaches came from Grossfeld's.
Right.
So they were much more open and used to dealing with the more diverse because they've been on the elite scene and they had kids that had actually lived and moved away from home.
Right. That's right.
So they had more experience, I would say, as far as the diversity of kids that they worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got quite a few people that came there. And I want to say I had 4 coaches at that time, and all 4 of them worked at Grossfeld's at some point in time.
Wow. That's amazing.
They'd all been trained by Mira Grossfeld.
Wow. I know we want to make a note because Muriel passed away just a little bit ago, and her impact, which we stopped to tell everybody because it's been a tough year in gymnastics.
Very tough.
Our legacy stars, it's been really tough. But Muriel, so that's really interesting. So you, Muriel, who just had everywhere, but she was one of the kind of first gymnasts that had that kind of hard training environment, right?
And it was one
People
of
would
the
move
first
away.
gyms that kids moved away from home to train.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think it might have been the first,
Right.
and it was that hard training, and we're going to be elite, and we're going to work out, 5, 6 days a week, and we're going to work out 4 or 5 hours a day. It was the first time it was really done to that extent. And they, went to school there, and the
Mhm.
homeschooling kind of thing, where I don't think it was exactly homeschool, but they had a special school that the kids went to and all.
Yeah.
So it started at home.
So what happened when they moved to your gym with this type of level of training?
It made it great for me. I was excited because I had 4 coaches. They were on different events. So I had one coach mainly up to that point, and then the next year I had my second coach that came in, Lori DiFrancesco, who's still at Arena Gymnastics now. She owns it now, one of the owners. Her and her husband Frank, who was also my coach.
Wow.
So I had Andy Antonelli, who was my main coach at first, and then he was in my bars, and then Frank was on vaulting. Lori was on like compulsory beam and no, she was optional beam, compulsory floor, and then Maureen was compulsory beam. It was they opposite. They shared that event, so it was fun. It was a lot of fun. We had, I want to say, about 8 elites at the time, or trying elite.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't all make it actually, but they all were working towards elite, or training towards elite.
Right.
So it was just a lot of fun. So I
Wow.
enjoyed it. And then right before my junior year in high school, Andy bought into a gym in New York, and it was Gym Cats, which is the original Gym
Yes.
Cats.
Okay.
People think of Gym Cats as Las Vegas. Well, the
Right.
original Gym Cats was in Yonkers, New York.
Right.
And
Oh,
Cassie Rice, who owns Gym Cats in Las Vegas, it's her mother who
right.
owned the
Okay.
gym.
Mm-hmm.
And my coach bought half of that gym. So
Hmm.
I moved down with him when he changed gyms, which
Wow.
my
Was it
commute
dramatic?
well, I went from 45 minutes away to 15 minutes away.
Oh, yeah. That's great. Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of interesting that the turn of the way things happened, me going closer to home. But so then I became a New York gymnast from there. But by that time I was already elite, so
Mhm.
I didn't really compete in New York per
Right.
se.
Right.
Um, but
Wow.
it was fun, and that was quite interesting too, changing gyms so late, and different building, different people, different teammates, different.
Yeah. 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 There's a lot. 'Cause I don't think people, as you mentioned, you're very close. You see these people, what, 20, 30 hours a week and year in and year out. So you get very close. Right. But saving that time to commute must have been great.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. I didn't have to take the train or public transportation anymore, so
Yeah.
that was nice. Very nice to not have to do that.
How was it being on the elite team? You know?
The elite team, well, there were a handful of us in the elite program,
Okay.
and we all knew each other. So prior to going elite, when I was a class 1, Kim Hamilton was also
Yes.
class 1, and
Sure.
she and I had become really good friends. Like my whole family knew her mom. Angie Dankins was in Jersey.
Right.
So I got to know her as well. Joyce Wilborn was one of my best friends.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
When I went elite, actually the very first year, which I was still at Arena at the time, when I started traveling with the elite program, because I was the only one from my team at first, I stayed in a room with North Stars.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Joyce Wilburn was, and Angie was from New Jersey and stuff. But I got to know them really, really well because I stayed with them in a hotel, so
Yeah.
that I didn't have to stay by myself, because back then parents didn't travel with the kids. We traveled with our coaches, and that was it.
Right.
So I became really close to, like, she and I became best friends, and then I became close to Angie. I became close to, I was close to Kim. I was close to a lot of the different girls that were in the elite program, because there was only a handful of us.
Yes.
So our
So-
families knew each other. They would see each other. It was like all, coming home to visit family members when they would get together at the meets.
Right. Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. It's because there is a great what you talk about, those athletes during that time, top elite athletes, and that's really nice. You wouldn't think about that at the time, but it makes a difference. It
Oh, it does.
definitely makes a difference, right?
It does.
Mhm.
And I remember, Diane Durham, the first time I met her and compete against her, I was like, oh my God, I'm competing against Diane Durham.
I didn't know you competed against Diane. Well,
Not a lot. She was pretty much done by the time I was
okay,
competing. Because I think it was like 1 year after the Olympics she competed.
right. Okay,
And that was the year I competed
I see.
elite, and that was the first year I made the national team. So I had seen her at the classic meets and that kind of stuff, and some of the invitationals that we would go to, that we would see some of these other teams, because
Mhm.
back then the elite still did the invitationals, so
I see.
we still had to go to all those meets like these normal ones.
Right. So tell us again, because as you know, it's only been a week, and we all miss Diane incredibly. And I didn't mean to say that. I performed with her much after she competed. Right, we were doing performance, but tell her what you thought when you saw Diane. I mean, she was. I mean, I don't think people get how incredible a gym she is, but from another artistic gymnast, kind of explain the impact of Diane Durham.
Well, gymnastically, like I had said in a post, it just, I realized that a kid like me could do that, could be on a national stage, could be on TV, could go to the Olympics, could, even though she had a really rough Olympic trials, and I felt so horrible, because by far she should have been on that Olympic team. There's no doubt in my mind that she should have been on that team. Not anything against anyone that was on there,
Mhm.
but she had earned that right, in my opinion. But I mean, to see that was like, okay, I could do this. Yeah, I could do this. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, let's go. Let's get the job done. I mean, by the time I really knew who she was, though, I was about to go elite myself.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
was kind of on that same level as her. But that didn't mean that I realized I could be that high up. My goal was just, I want to be a Black gymnast on the national team. I want to make it. That's
Yeah.
my goal, just to make elite and be on a national team. Can I do it? And I
Right.
was like, oh, there she is. Yeah, you can do it. You can do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So you enjoyed your elite time as an elite athlete?
I did. I did. It was a lot different back then. We didn't really have, the elite world was very, there was nothing that happened other than the competitions. So you
Hmm.
went to the zone meets, you went to the class meets, you went to championships, and that was it. There was one, maybe two, you know, um, clinics, or they have when they get together in the times,
Yeah,
for
training
workouts and stuff,
camps.
training
Hmm.
camps. We had one or two a year, maybe.
Right.
So it wasn't like today, where you're spending so much time that with each other. You only had training camps if you made a team.
Hmm.
And then you didn't see anybody until assignments, and you get an assignment, and then you see them at that assignment, unless it was really big like Worlds. There was no training camp for the smaller types of events that we went to. So, and it wasn't a ton of them. I can't say I expected a ton, but I think I got one assignment my first year.
Okay. Hmm.
So I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't expecting that.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, it's a different time. A different time. So then tell us how you came to your collegiate career.
I I knew when I went elite that the chances of me making the Olympics were pretty small. And
Mhm.
believe it or not, that was not a goal.
Okay.
Not that I didn't want it. It's just didn't I didn't have an illusion that I could make the Olympic team, even though that would have been nice. And getting in the elite world, I saw it's just not gonna happen. My compulsories were never as strong. And in US, compulsories were 60% of our score. And I just wasn't a strong compulsory gymnast. I was okay,
Hmm.
but I if it was just up to optionals, maybe I had a shot. But if I was just with the compulsories, I knew that just wasn't really much. My chances were slim. I'm not going to say it couldn't have happened. So I set my sights on college. At the time, there weren't very many elite gymnasts that went to college and did gymnastics.
That's so interesting. So I think you're right, but what did they do? They just didn't want to go to the
They
collegiate?
just quit
Wow.
gymnastics. Yeah, there was not that there weren't any, but it was almost like it was looked down upon. Like, you're gonna do college gymnastics? That's a step down. Why would you
Right.
do that? And it just wasn't such a normal, this is a step you should get to. But for
Mhm.
me, I thought, you know what, this looks like fun. And my parent, my mother always says, I'm paying for your college degree right now. So I pay for gymnastics, gymnastics pays for college.
Gotcha.
So that was the way she described to me. She's like, I'm paying for your college right now. So you're gonna have to get a scholarship if you want to go. I'm
Wow.
like, okay. Works for me.
Mhm.
Um, I was not really being heavily recruited though, which
Oh,
was
interesting.
interesting. I actually wasn't being recruited at all, except for Nebraska was the only school that I was hearing from at all.
That's
Which,
interesting. Wow.
yeah, but I also didn't do anything. Like, I didn't write to any schools. I didn't do anything along those lines. I was competing elite still, and as you know, because we spent a lot of time in the summertime at the Olympic Festival, which was like
Yes.
July and August. Well, Olympic Festival was in August. We were training all the way through the end of the summer, and
Mhm.
then I'd have a couple of months, and then I'd start with the in December. I would start with invitationals.
Right.
So I didn't really have a lot of time. And I just was like, you know what? Someone's going to call me. I'm not going to worry. And Nebraska did. And I actually knew a lot of girls on the team there. And Racine Smith was a friend who was on the team there.
Mhm.
And I knew a lot of the guys on the guys' team. So I was like, oh,
Right.
well, they're calling me and I know them. So this is great. Um, but what happened was I discovered that we were at a meet and Suzanne Yoklin was talking to my coach and said to him, well, it's too bad she's only a junior. I would love to recruit her or something along those lines. And my coach was like, she's a senior. She's graduating this year. And yeah, apparently they had my graduation year wrong.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, so
Mm.
next thing you know, I went to visit Georgia.
Mhm.
And once people figured out, I started getting phone calls left and right. But by then I was kind of like, you know what? Too late. I'm going to Georgia.
Wow. That's so interesting. Okay.
So that was it. I went and visited, but I made her wait before I told her a long time. I kept her in suspense.
You just wanted to do that? What's
She's like, so you know where you're going? I'm like, yeah, I know. She's like, you gonna tell me? I'm like, nope.
so funny? Interesting. So at the time, because Alabama, where were they ranked at the time when you were joining them?
I'm not sure where Alabama was. Georgia had finished fourth that year.
Okay.
I don't remember what Alabama finished. Because believe it or not, as much as I wanted to do gymnastics in college, I didn't pay that close of attention. I
Mhm.
knew the schools that I was interested in, where I was willing to go to school.
Gotcha.
Um, but I didn't really know anything about like nationals and at the time it wasn't on TV, I don't even think.
Probably not. Yeah, you're right. It didn't become really popular till, well, Susan had a lot to do with that. You know, they
She
really did.
did.
But yeah, yeah. Talk about that building a team because now people would not imagine how it was probably when you went to how it is now, like the whole shebang.
Nothing like that. We had never won. Um,
Wow.
they had finished fourth, which is the highest finish they'd ever had. And Suzanne was this hungry young coach who was going to prove everybody wrong. But we're talking the South. And at the time, there was a women's athletic program and a men's athletic program. We had a women's athletic director, and we traveled in vans. We had a gym that had no air conditioning in Georgia.
Ooh,
We practiced in August in Georgia, no air conditioning.
wow.
We didn't have a lot, our budget was so small. But Suzanne started this, this booster club, and they
Mhm.
were donating money, which allowed us to get, leotards and gear and stuff like that. Because if it hadn't been for that, we wouldn't have had that many leotards or warm
Wow.
up suits. We'd probably gotten one a year at best. And she was determined, even though, and I remember being at a gymnastics meet my freshman year, and men's basketball coach walked down on the court and told Suzanne, you need to get all this equipment and get off the court now. I need to have practice.
Oh, dang.
And he thought that that was okay. He was going to kick a meet. We were in a competition. And he told us to clear off the basketball court because he needed to practice.
Wow.
I couldn't believe when he was told he couldn't do that, because women's sports were just not respected the same. They didn't get the same, anything, money, respect, time, you name it. Everything was secondary. And so Suzanne wanted to change that. She was going to change that. She was going to prove to them that women's gymnastics and women's sports were important. So we did all kinds of things. Like when I came in my recruiting trip, they had 500 people in the stands maybe. And that was like a big meet.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, we're going to get people in the stands. We're going to get people excited about gymnastics. So we had flyers, we had schedule cards, posters. We had to go around. We had to hand them out. We would stand at the supermarket and hand out flyers for our meets. We would stand on campus and hand flyers out to students about our competitions. You name it, we were doing it to try to get it. We did halftime shows at men's basketball games. They had 10,000 people. So we did halftime shows, and they would pull the beam out and we would do exhibitions on beam. And it was like, come see the gymnastics meet. And it just built slowly, but it built. And by my senior year, we had 6,500 people in the stands.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, to really be able to be a part of that, because I don't think people really understand how popular it is now, what Suzanne and the other coaches really built, like you just said, like kind of grassroots and made it happen.
And we were a scrappy team. We were not, we had well-known names. I mean, you had me was on a national team. You had Lucy Weiner, who was on the Olympic team. You had Andrea Thomas, who was on the Canadian Olympic team.
Mm-hmm.
So we had people who were known, but we also had a lot of people who were unknown, club gymnasts and just scrappy gymnasts. And my freshman year was the first year we won nationals. We went in ranked 5th.
Wow, interesting.
Nobody even considered us a front runner, not even considered. And the funny thing is, if you look back on the TV coverage for that year, there wasn't a ton of coverage on us because TV follows your top contenders.
Yes.
They didn't follow us that much.
Mm-hmm.
But not like we were, so there wasn't as much footage of us as you would think, considering we just won the national championship.
Wow, interesting.
And nobody expected it. Everyone was like, what just happened?
That's so. Tell us how it feels to win the nationals.
It's amazing. I mean, especially when nobody expects it. So we're just like slowly in there going, you know what, just do our job. Let's just go in there and do our job. And we knew we could win. And Suzanne knew we could win. She made us all confident that there was no reason that we should not walk out of that building without the national championship.
Wow.
And it wasn't cocky or anything. It was just, we can do it. So we believed it, and we just slowly, event after event, got the job done. So we were so excited though, and I want to say we won one of the first, maybe not the first, but one of the first women's national championship programs at Georgia. So that was a big deal.
Wow. Okay.
Not the first. Women's basketball, I believe, had won a championship, I believe, but I'm not positive of that.
Mm-hmm. Geez, that's exciting.
It was very exciting, and it was fun.
And talk about your individual, because that's a big deal.
That was my junior year, and we hosted at Georgia. At this point in time, obviously we have a name, and we went in ranked 5th. Even though we had a name, we were 5th going into nationals. And just so you know, the team at the time, when you went in ranked 5th, you had to bye on the last rotation. So we had to sit and wait
to see
for everyone else to finish competing before we knew we won. And my junior year, we finished competing, and we knew Suzanne knew we were in first place, but we didn't, because the athletes, she wouldn't tell us.
Mm-hmm.
But UCLA was on floor, and UCLA was the top ranked team, and they had a bunch of hotshot athletes, and they had been ranked number 1 on floor. Like, there was no question. And we were just like, oh no. And they went hit after hit after hit after hit. And we're like, okay. And then next thing you know, we find out that they were petitioning scores. from
Interesting.
team, I believe it was, but they were petitioning scores. And it might have happened before floor, but they were petitioning scores and we were waiting for those petitions to come back.
Wow.
We ended up winning by 0.05. It is still, I believe, the smallest margin of victory. And
Yeah.
it was, they had actually gotten some of those petitions. They had been awarded. So their scores had gone up and we were just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Scary.
That is
But
amazing.
that was the year I won as well. And I
Okay.
didn't even know that I'd won until one of our, I don't know if it was our athletic trainer or sports information person came up to me and she's like, so how are you feeling? And I'm like, about what? She goes, you just won. I'm like, what? It's like, you won the all around. I'm like, I did? I was like, oh my gosh. So then I started screaming and I was excited and going crazy.
Wow. So talk about the impact because, it's a big deal. It's so you didn't consider college gymnastics, but while you were there, it was growing, 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 and the
Yeah.
impact was right there, right? And you're the first individual, right?
It hit me a little bit later. At the time, it was just excited that I won.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I could because I had been ranked in the top 3.
Right.
And my freshman year, I finished 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
And my sophomore year, I had an injury, so it wasn't quite as high. But I knew that it was a possibility. It wasn't like I was
Right.
out of the realm, but I wasn't paying attention to the rest of the competition. And I knew that they had a really good meet, and I knew Kim Hamilton was in the top, but
Mhm.
I didn't know she had fallen on beam because
I
we were
see.
competing at the same time.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
And there were a couple other people who were in that top who I didn't know how they had done. So that was more why the surprise, because I just
Mhm.
had no clue where anyone stood. I wasn't so much further ahead than everybody else. We were all pretty close.
Interesting. Wow, wow. So that's interesting. You talk about because I've gotten to know Kim over the time afterwards, and she's done a lot of stuff. I think we performed together. She did some anti-gravity work, which was great. But it's so interesting to hear that this time that you guys are competing at the same time, both really great gymnasts and now friends because you guys competed as elites, right?
Right. We
Oh
had been friends since high school. Yeah, long, long time. We actually became friends as class 1 gymnasts.
wow.
So, um, and we're still really good friends. I love her to death. But we it was interesting because she and I had gone back and forth. Like our freshman year, I had the highest score in prelims, but then she beat me on floor in finals.
Hmm.
Sophomore year, like I said, I had some injuries, so I wasn't 100%, but I still finished second to Kim. So my junior year, we were both in floor finals, and I'm like, no, we are in my home, we're in my stadium, you are not beating me again. It is not happening. So we end up tying.
Funny. That's great.
And I was so excited we tied. I was like, yes, this is even better than winning for both of us to win together. I felt that was better than me winning on my own, was for us to win together.
Yeah. So what do you think now about college gymnastics now that you know, you've seen its growth and its impact and people do, you know, work on getting to college. I mean, that's a big goal for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is exciting to see where it has grown. It
Mm,
is so exciting to see how much better the gymnastics is, better the athletes coming in, how much better trained they are, because now it's not an afterthought. Now it's not like I'm going to do the best I can in club and then I'll just kind of go to college.
right.
Now it's my goal is to do as amazing I can so I can get a scholarship, because if I don't do that, I'm not getting a scholarship. So they have to put their best foot forward all the time.
Interesting.
And there's so many athletes on these teams that it is so competitive to make the lineup. So
Uh,
it makes the gymnastics so much more exciting, because you know what, if I screw up, I might not be in a lineup next week. So I got to make sure I get the job done. And if I screw up, I might let my teammates down,
mhm.
which is a big difference in club, because club gymnastics, it's all about you getting a score, you qualifying the states, you qualifying the regionals or nationals. And college, it's about, if I don't hit, now my other teammates are going to have to carry my slack, or I have to carry the team as best I can, because a half a tenth could be the difference between winning or losing.
Right, right.
So that step I took could be the difference between us winning or losing.
That's amazing. So, I mean, the thing is that I don't think people understand, especially like you're saying, the difference of being in team and how that works. And let me ask you this. Does it help your gymnastics because of the pressures like competing for others as opposed to yourself?
It does. It's a different pressure because you don't want to let them down.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, you're all in that gym, you're all working hard, you're all, pushing yourselves to be the best. You're putting on a leotard that says Georgia on it, or, and you want to represent not just you, but your university. So you don't want to let them down. And then the fans at college meets are very different fans. They're a different type of fan. They're not there just because of gymnastics. They're there because
Mm,
of Georgia or whoever you're competing against. They're not just gymnastics fans. Many of them don't watch gymnastics outside of college gymnastics. So
okay.
it's about the university and what they feel about the university and the gymnastics team as part of the university's athletic program. So you don't want to let these people down. You don't want to let yourself down, your teammates, your coaches. So it's a different pressure.
Okay, that's so interesting. That's interesting, but it's nice that there's another option that people have, and I think to enjoy. I always look at it as a very enjoyable part of, you know what I'm saying?
It's so much fun. It
Mm,
is, and it's so much. You have these people in your corner no matter what.
mhm.
You have those 12, 13, 15, however many girls on your team in your corner from start to finish. Whether they're doing a choreography with you on floor or they're screaming and yelling for you as you're going, they're in your corner. So, and it's a family. Like I felt like I had a family when I was in club, but it was a different family in college.
Mm, interesting. Yes. So tell me about after you finish and what you're doing now, and what you think about gymnastics. Gymnastics nowadays.
I do the very roundabout way. I've always coached. I started coaching when I was 16.
Mm,
And so I've always kind of coached on the side. But after college, I went to law school. I wanted to be an agent, but decided that was not the job for me. I didn't have the right mentality for it.
mhm.
You have to be a certain type of personality to try to convince these athletes to let you negotiate their contracts and
Right.
dealing with a certain type of person. And I realized that it just wasn't me. So I went into college athletics, athletic administration. I did compliance, so NCAA rules, regulations, that stuff.
Mhm.
Did that for about 10 years. And I also coached on the side. I eventually went to a small D3 school in New Jersey, which is how I ended up here. And I was actually responsible for the intercollegiate athletic program for most of the day-to-day operations. So I wanted to step up, but eventually got to the point where it became too much and I needed a break.
Mhm.
So I started coaching college gymnastics, which was fun. A completely different type of coaching.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but it was a happy marriage because I coached gymnastics and I had been an athletic administrator.
Right.
So being a college coach was kind of in the middle of those two,
Mhm.
because you have to do the administrative stuff and you have to do the coaching stuff.
Right.
And so it's a very different world, but it's a fun world. And I did that for 3 years, and then I had my daughter and decided to not work as much after she was born. So then eventually I went back to coaching club. So that's where I am now.
But you're judging too.
I am judging. I started judging when I was doing athletic administration. That was one way to keep myself involved in the
Mhm.
sport. And
Mhm.
fortunately, I was able to start pretty high in the judging community. So it made it um, a little bit easier to get into it as far as be able to judge the meets and stuff like that. So I judged in New York at first, and then when I moved to Jersey, I moved myself over to judging in New Jersey.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, it's the judging is a interesting thing. As I tell people, it was never my forte. I think you have to have a special, you do to be a judge, and also you do have to stay on top of stuff. It's not
Oh,
just
yeah.
stay involved. It's a study, and it's like crazy. It's
It
like,
is, and the tests are
yeah.
they're better now. I think with the online testing, it's a little better.
Mhm.
Um, the old way they used to do it is there were 5 parts to the test, you would take apart and then you would get your grade. And the thing was, there's 10 questions. If you get two wrong, you have an 80, but you need an 85 to pass. So
Wow.
then people would start panicking because it's like, oh my gosh, I got an 80. Now I have to get a 90 on the next part or I'm going to fail. And that messes with your head. That can mess with your head, you know? So it was very stressful for a lot of people.
Hmm.
I kind of liked it just because I like knowing where I was, where I needed to, you know, it's like, if I got a 50, I know I'm done.
That's it. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no, judging is really, it's important, but it's also really really challenging, and the studying thing is real.
It's
You just
great
got to
for
study.
coaching though. Having my judging credentials
Right.
is great
Mm,
because when, you know, like other people I coach with, they'll make changes in a routine. I'm like, you can't do that. And they're like, why? And I said, because now our start value is going to be here, or now she's going to get this deduction because you changed that. So she has to have it in. Yes, she has to have that in the routine.
yeah, you're right.
No, she
Yeah,
can't do that, you know. So it's great to know that because that has happened several times and it's gonna happen. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast, but
mhm.
it makes it easier. And then I also do judging in the gym with the kids just so that they know um, where they sit, where they are. You know, I'll judge routines and stuff.
No, that's good. That's really it's convenient and good for the gym that you're right there.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's great. So tell me, as we finish up, kind of what your thought of the state of gymnastics is these days. Your sport. We've been through a lot, but
It's interesting. I mean, I do believe that if it had not been for Simone Biles, that gymnastics would be in trouble in general. I think Simone, in my opinion, has saved the sport of gymnastics because she's so exciting. And not just her. I mean, USA Gymnastics is exciting in general. We have so many amazing athletes on the national team, but as a overall worldwide, it's almost a feel like it's not getting where it used to be. It's not the same excitement because, you know, obviously with the scoring, people kind of like they watch and they see a routine and have no clue whether it's good or not. I mean,
mm,
I can watch a great routine and think it's great, and then the score comes up. I'm like, okay, I don't, because the start value was low, or because
yeah,
you know the deductions are so much higher, and you don't know that they took a point off for that versus taking 2/10 off for that. If you don't know these things, you don't understand why they come up with what they do.
right.
Um, I think that it is great to see that the skill level is as high as it is, but I don't think it's rewarded like it needs to be. I
Hmm.
think that they've made the rules so unattainable
Interesting.
that it's impossible. I mean, if you're not Simone, you're not getting a 17.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, why do you keep making it harder when nobody can get it anyways? What's the point? You're just making it so that the scores get lower and lower, and people lose interest if you're not a diehard fan. You start seeing those scores, you think, oh, the athletes aren't as good, so they walk away. So I feel like USA Gymnastics in general, but specifically her, has made it so that it is exciting to watch.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
very exciting to watch her. It's very exciting to have watched the Olympics with Ali and the rest of that team. They were amazing to watch.
Hmm.
Um, but overall, I don't know that it would have been as exciting when you weren't watching the US.
Wow, that's true. That's a good point. It's a
So,
good point.
so I
Is it?
don't know that that it's done them any good to continue to do this.
What do you mean?
Make it harder, make the rules
Oh,
harder,
I
make
see what
it, you
you're
know,
saying.
that kind of thing.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing as we're going. Well,
How's
I want.
rhythmic doing nowadays?
What's that?
How is rhythmic? I don't know the rules there, so did they do the same thing?
It's kind of weird. I don't know them as close either. And rhythmic's kind of crazy. They go back and forth with all the rules. I mean, I will say, we qualified for the U.S. It's a big deal. We qualified two athletes because I think they're only like 20 or 25 athletes in rhythmic because then you have group, right?
Right,
It was a big deal for us to qualify two athletes to games. I mean, that was huge, huge, huge.
right.
So they go back and forth with this difficulty thing like you're talking about. And in rhythmic, you always have to balance the performance side and the beautiful side. And it was getting a little contortionist like. Talk about stuff you can't do. Contortionist like crazy flexibility, right?
Right.
And the reason, if you're that flexible, you're not going to be jumping and excited. It's just so hard. If you're like la 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 la, it's
Yeah.
hard to do hard things, right? So I think that they have married that a lot better. And there are a lot more gymnasts from around the world instead of just the Russians or just the Bulgarians. Although the Russians are still so freaking. I think they got twins that are like going 1 and 2 in the world for the last 4 years. It's like
Yeah.
kind of crazy. But I think a group has done really exciting. So they've done pretty well with their rules. They've done a little bit better about it. But it's the same thing watching it. You can't really tell. I mean, you can just have to kind of guess as you see it. You can't call the scores like you can artistic.
Right.
14.228844 is just kind of hard for anybody to try and guess.
Yeah.
So so rhythmic is doing its thing, and it's an interesting time. I'm crossing my fingers. Hope Olympics comes through, and all the athletes have their chance to showcase what they can do, because it's been hard to wait for a year. I don't think people understand not all sports. Taking a year off is a serious thing.
Especially them. I mean, when you think of the number of things that could go wrong in the routines that they do because of so much they're doing,
Yes.
and the repetitions that they do. So, I'm taking a chance and then I've got to do 10 routines and I'm doing that 5-6 days a week. You're beating up your body and taking a chance that something just very wrong could happen. So it's hard to add a year to it.
Yeah. I know people don't understand a year. So like, it's one thing you say 6 months but I think, I'm just holding out that things work out for them. And, as we get through this time, I want to thank you so much for being a part of the Black Gymnasts in History. It's really fun. I always love seeing you if we're out someplace, right?
Yeah, it's been a while because I haven't been to championships, and with the COVID, we haven't been able to do anything.
And it's so funny because real quickly you mentioned the Olympic festivals, which for old schools, those were the most fun events ever.
Yes.
Okay. Oh my
That was
gosh.
the first time I met you, like really, really met you, because we were on team together.
Yes, I know. If people don't realize that kind of fun. So Olympic Festival, for those folks who don't know, it's a U.S. festival for the top U.S. athletes in all the Olympic sports get together and they compete on different teams. So it's East, West, South, but you're on teams, and it's just so fun because for one, you get to see all the sports, and us in gymnastics, we see the artistic, you see the rhythmic. But also all the Olympic sports. And you're there, I forget, you're like, what's it take, about a week or a week and a half?
A week.
Yes.
And we would do things together. So it was like the South team would all get together.
Yes.
Or the North team. I was always the East, but we would get together as an East team. And I remember us like going, okay, we got to go get something for the guys. And all the girls would get some like gifts and things that had to do with the East. And we would present it, give it to the guys or for me. And we would do it for the rhythmic gymnasts. And they would do us. So we actually really, really got to know each other so well.
Yeah, it was really fun.
We were all a team. It wasn't just you usually weren't on a team with your teammates and club teammates.
Right. Yeah, because they spread, at least for rhythmic, we just kind of, dialed out which team you'll go to.
And that's what they did for the artistic too. They just spread us out. And so you got to be an actual team because it was more important for the team than it was individuals. So it was kind of like college. Mm-hmm. But it was just as important that the rhythmic team did well and the men's team did well because we were all part of that team.
Yeah.
So it made it, and even like the swimmers from the East do well because it was an overall number or somking like that too.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, it was a big competition between all of the different teams.
Yeah. So over every single sport, there was points were given, and there was like an overall kind of thing. So we were like, okay, we're going to basketball, rooting for the East. We're rooting for the East.
That was fun. Yeah, I really miss that. That was really a fun.
I wish they still had that. I know.
Yeah, it's times where athletes can do their best, but also enjoy being around each other. Kind of is what was nice about it. But yeah, it's a good time. So I wish you the best as we get through this pandemic. It's so great that we're back kind of full circle here. Yeah. Coming together. I can't believe you don't understand. Woo! Yeah. I remember she's just a will thing. So yeah. So thank you again. And
thank you for having me.